Everyone froze when she opened the vault. The security guard's hand shot to his weapon. The bank manager dropped his coffee, the ceramic mug shattering against the marble floor. Behind Zaire, someone whispered a prayer. Because the vault wasn't supposed to open. It had been sealed for 70 years, they said. Welded shut by court order, protected by laws that no longer made sense. But the ancient key in Zaire's hand had turned like it was oiled yesterday, and now the massive steel door swung wide, revealing darkness that seemed to breathe. "Step away from the vault," the guard ordered, his voice cracking on the last word. Zaire couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The key, her grandfather's final gift, burned cold in her palm. "I said step away." More guards appeared, surrounding her in a semicircle. Bank employees pressed against the walls, some filming with their phones, others too shocked to do anything but stare. The manager was speaking rapidly into his phone, his face the color of old paper. "She's a Brooks," someone whispered. "Look at her, she's definitely a Brooks." The name rippled through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. Brooks. 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 That's when the CEO arrived. Cordelia Ashford didn't walk, she materialized, as if the building itself had summoned her, tall, severe, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her heels clicked against the marble in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. "Everyone out," she commanded. Now. The room emptied in seconds. Even the guards retreated, leaving Zaire alone with the woman whose family had destroyed hers. "So," Cordelia said, circling Zaire like a predator, "a Brooks finally returns. Your grandfather waited too long. You're not prepared for what's in that vault. It belongs to my family." "Your family?" Cordelia's laugh was sharp enough to cut. "Your family gave up any claim to that fortune when they tried to blackmail mine. When they threatened to expose secrets that would have destroyed half the founding families of this city. That's not true? How would you know? You're just a child playing with things you don't understand." Cordelia stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Zaire could see her own reflection in the woman's cold eyes. "That vault contains more than money. It contains proof, documents, contracts, things that were better left buried. Then why didn't you destroy them?" "Because your great-great-grandmother was clever. She made sure that if anything happened to the contents of that vault, copies would be released. A dead woman's switch, they called it. So we sealed it instead, made a deal with your family. Stay quiet, stay away, and we'd let you live in peace." "Some peace," Zaire spat. "My family lost everything. Your family kept their lives. That's more than they deserved." Cordelia glanced at the open vault, and for the first time, something like fear flickered across her face. "But now you've broken the seal, activated things that should have stayed dormant. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The lights in the bank flickered. Just for a second, just long enough for the darkness in the vault to seem to reach out, hungry and waiting. "I'm claiming what's mine," Zaire said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Then God help you," Cordelia whispered. "And God help us all." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking faster now, almost running. At the door, she paused. "You have no idea what your family really was, what blood paid for that fortune, what your ancestor did to protect it." She looked back, and her smile was terrible. "But you're about to find out." The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the empty bank like a gunshot. Zaire stood alone, the vault gaping before her like an open mouth. Inside, she could see shadows that might have been stacks of gold, or might have been something else entirely. The air that drifted out smelled of old paper and older secrets. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't go in alone. They're watching. Trust no one. A friend." But Zaire was already stepping forward, drawn by 70 years of stolen legacy and the weight of her grandfather's final words. "The truth isn't always in what people say. It's in what they're afraid to say." What did she just unlock? Why is everyone so afraid? The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. Zaire sat beside her grandfather's bed, memorizing every line on his face, every age spot on his hands. For 3 days she'd been living in this uncomfortable chair, surviving on vending machine coffee and the kind of hope that doctors crush with carefully chosen words. "Baby girl," Grandpa whispered, his voice barely audible over the mechanical breathing of machines. "Come closer." She leaned in, her tears falling onto their joined hands. His skin felt like paper, so thin she could see the blue veins underneath. These hands had built houses, fixed cars, held her when nightmares woke her as a child. Now they trembled with the effort of holding hers. "I need to tell you something," he said, each word a struggle. "About your grandmother. About what really happened." Zaire's breath caught. Her grandmother had died when she was 7, a heart attack, her mother had said. Natural causes. Grandpa had never spoken about it, had changed the subject whenever Zaire asked. The silence around her grandmother's death was just another family mystery, like why her mother barely visited, or why certain names made Grandpa's face go dark. "There's a key," he continued, his grip tightening with surprising strength. "In my workshop. Behind the picture of you at your high school graduation. The one where you're wearing her necklace." She nodded, committing every word to memory. The workshop was Grandpa's sanctuary, the place where he'd taught her that building something with your own hands was the closest thing to magic in this world. She'd spent countless hours there, learning to measure twice and cut once, to sand with the grain, to find the beauty hidden in raw wood. "Promise me," he said, his eyes suddenly sharp and clear, cutting through the fog of medication. "Promise me you won't tell anyone. Not your mother, not Kieran. No one?" The mention of her boyfriend's name sent ice through her veins. Grandpa had never liked Kieran, had always found excuses to be elsewhere when he visited. She'd thought it was just protective grandfather instincts, the way he'd narrow his eyes when Kieran's car pulled into the driveway, the way he'd mutter under his breath when Kieran's name came up at dinner. "I promise," she whispered. "The key opens something that belongs to you, something they'll try to take, something they'll say you have no right to." His breathing became labored, each inhale a mountain to climb. "But it's yours, baby girl. It was always meant to be yours." The heart monitor began its frantic dance, beeping in a rhythm that meant ending. Nurses rushed in, their practiced efficiency pushing Zaire against the wall. She watched them work, watched the numbers on the screens drop, watched the man who raised her fade like a photograph left in the sun. "I love you, Grandpa," she called out, over the chaos of medical intervention. His eyes found hers one last time, holding a lifetime of love and secrets. "Remember what I taught you. The truth isn't always in what people say. It's in what they're afraid to say." Those were his last words. The machines screamed their electronic grief, the nurses stepped back with practiced sympathy, and Zaire found herself alone with the shell of the man who'd been her whole world. The funeral was held on a Thursday, under a sky that couldn't decide between rain and sun. Zaire stood at the graveside, watching them lower the polished casket into the earth. The funeral director had done a good job. Grandpa looked peaceful, almost sleeping. But his hands were wrong. They'd folded them over his chest with a Bible, but Grandpa's hands were meant to hold tools, to create, to fix what was broken. Her mother stood 10 feet away, under a separate umbrella, even though the rain had stopped. She wore designer black, checking her phone between hymns, her face a mask of appropriate grief that never quite reached her eyes. "We need to talk about the house," her mother said, before the last shovel of dirt had settled. "Not now, Mom. It needs to be sold. The market is good right now, and frankly, that old place is falling apart. We could get at least—" I said not. Zaire's voice carried enough edge to make the other mourners turn. Her mother's perfectly painted lips pressed into a thin line. "You always were his favorite. Even when you disappointed him, even when you dropped out of college to play nurse, even when you threw your life away for what? For taking care of the man who actually raised me?" The slap came fast, the crack of palm against cheek loud enough to echo across the cemetery. The funeral director stepped forward, then reconsidered, retreating to a safe distance. "You have no idea what I sacrificed," her mother hissed, her mask finally cracking. "What I gave up, what I protected you from. That old man filled your head with fairy tales and promises, but the real world doesn't care about your feelings." Protected me from what? But her mother was already walking away, her heels clicking against the wet pavement in a rhythm that sounded like running. She paused at her car, looking back with something that might have been regret. "The house has to go, Zaire. It's not safe for you there. Not anymore." Then she was gone, leaving Zaire alone among the headstones and the questions. That night, Zaire sat in Grandpa's workshop, breathing in the familiar scent of sawdust and linseed oil. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, tools arranged by size and purpose, half-finished projects waiting for hands that would never complete them, coffee mug still sitting by the lathe with a ring of dried coffee at the bottom. The picture hung where he'd said it would be. Her 18-year-old self grinned from the frame, wearing the antique locket that had belonged to her grandmother. She'd been so proud that day, graduating despite everything, despite her parents' divorce, despite the chaos. Grandpa had been the only family member to attend the ceremony. Behind the frame, set into the wall so cleverly she'd never noticed it, was a small metal door. Her fingers found the edges, pressed the hidden catch Grandpa must have installed decades ago. The door swung open to reveal a space no bigger than a shoebox. Inside was the key, wrapped in a piece of paper that had yellowed with age. She unfolded it carefully, afraid it might crumble at her touch. Her grandfather's handwriting filled the page, but younger, steadier, the letters formed with deliberate care. For my granddaughter, when the time comes, the truth about your inheritance, the truth about why your grandmother died, the truth about what Kieran's family really wants. Her hands shook as she read that last line. Kieran's family? What could they possibly have to do with her grandmother's death? The key itself was a work of art, old, ornate, unlike anything modern. The metal was dark with age, but still strong, covered in engravings that seemed to tell a story in a language she couldn't read. It was heavy in her palm, substantial in a way that modern keys never were. Her phone buzzed. Kieran. Hey baby, how are you holding up? I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the funeral. Work emergency. She stared at the text, remembering how Grandpa's face would change whenever Kieran's name came up. The way he'd watch Kieran's car pull away, muttering about wolves in sheep's clothing. The questions he'd asked about Kieran's family, questions she'd dismissed as old, fashioned prejudice. I'm fine, she typed back, the lie bitter on her fingertips. Want me to come over? I can bring wine. You shouldn't be alone right now. Not tonight. You sure? I'm worried about you. Have you been to the house? Started going through his things? The question felt wrong, too eager, too specific. Why would he ask about Grandpa's things? I need to be alone, she typed. Okay. But call me if you need anything. Love you. She didn't respond. Love felt like too big a word for what was between them now, tainted by her grandfather's warning and the weight of secrets. She looked around the workshop one more time, at the tools and projects and memories. Then she slipped the key into her pocket, where it seemed to pulse with possibility and threat. Whatever door it opened, whatever truth it revealed, she would face it. She owed Grandpa that much. She owed herself that much. But first, she needed to understand why her mother had been so afraid, why Kieran was so interested in Grandpa's belongings, and why her grandfather had waited until his deathbed to trust her with this secret. The rain began again, drumming against the workshop windows like fingers tapping out a warning. Somewhere in this city, behind some door she'd never noticed, was the answer to questions she hadn't even known to ask. What is the key for? Why did Grandpa make her promise secrecy? Have you ever felt like your family was hiding something from you? What would you risk to find out the truth? The first time Zaire met Kieran, she'd been drowning in grief. Her college roommate had died in a car accident, sudden, senseless, the kind of tragedy that makes you question everything. Zaire had fled to a coffee shop to escape their shared dorm room, where every object screamed absence. He'd been sitting in the corner, reading a book about architecture, and when their eyes met, he'd smiled like he'd been waiting for her all his life. You look like you need this more than I do, he'd said, sliding his untouched coffee across the table. That was Kieran, always knowing exactly what to say, always appearing when her defenses were down. She'd thought it was fate. Grandpa had seen it differently. Funny how that boy always shows up when you're hurting, Grandpa had said once, watching Kieran's BMW pull into the driveway. Like a vulture circling wounded prey. That's not fair, Grandpa. He's been nothing but good to me. Has he now? The old man's eyes had narrowed, studying Kieran through the window. Tell me about his family, where they're from, what they do for a living. But Kieran had always been vague about his background. His parents were in business. They traveled frequently. They valued their privacy. The few times Zaire had pressed for details, he'd changed the subject with a perfectly timed kiss or a surprise gift or a declaration of love that made her questions seem petty. Now, sitting in her apartment with the mysterious key heavy in her pocket, Zaire thought about all the red flags she'd painted green, the way Kieran always steered conversations away from her family history, how he'd tense up whenever she mentioned wanting to research her genealogy, the subtle ways he'd discouraged her from spending too much time with Grandpa. He's getting old, baby, Kieran would say. Sometimes old people get confused, Start seeing conspiracies everywhere. It's sad, but it's natural. Her phone rang. Kieran's name lit up the screen, and for the first time in their 3-year relationship, she hesitated before answering. "I'm worried about you," he said without preamble. "You're not answering my texts. I told you I needed space. Space isn't what you need right now. You need support. You need someone who understands what you're going through." His voice was honey and concern, the perfect boyfriend tone he'd perfected. "Have you eaten? I could bring Thai food, your favorite." "I'm not hungry." A pause. When he spoke again, something had shifted in his voice. "Have you been to your grandfather's house? Started going through his things?" There it was again, that eager interest in Grandpa's belongings. "Why do you keep asking about that?" "I'm just thinking about you. Estates can be complicated. My family has lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing. They could help make sure everything is handled properly." "Since when does your family have estate lawyers?" Another pause, longer this time. "We have all kinds of lawyers. That's what happens when you're in business." "What kind of business exactly? Why are you interrogating me?" Now he sounded hurt, wounded. It was a tone she'd heard before, whenever she pushed too hard about his background. "I'm trying to help you." Chapter 4, the public or emotional betrayal trigger. Target, 1,000 to 1,200 words. The First National Bank of Commerce stood like a fortress in the heart of downtown, its marble columns reaching toward heaven, while its foundations dug deep into secrets. Zaire had passed this building 1,000 times, never giving it a second thought. Now, with her grandfather's key burning in her pocket, those imposing doors felt like the entrance to another world. She pushed through the revolving door, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor. The lobby was a cathedral of wealth, gold fixtures, crystal chandeliers, the kind of opulence that made even breathing feel expensive. Men in $1,000 suits moved past her like she was invisible, their conversations conducted in the hushed tones reserved for money and power. The main desk stretched across the back wall, staffed by women with perfect hair and practiced smiles. Zaire approached the youngest-looking one, hoping she'd be less intimidating than the others. "I need to access the founder's vault," she said, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. The smile froze on the teller's face. Her fingers, which had been dancing across her keyboard, went completely still. The color drained from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "The founder's vault. My grandfather left me a key." The teller's eyes darted to her colleagues, then to something beneath her desk. Zaire heard a soft buzzing sound, an alarm, silent but urgent. The other tellers had stopped what they were doing, their customer service masks slipping to reveal something that looked like fear. "Please wait here," the woman said, her voice pitched higher than before. "I need to get my supervisor." "Is there a problem?" But the teller was already backing away, almost running toward a door marked "Private." The remaining staff watched Zaire like she was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Conversations throughout the lobby had stopped. Even the wealthy clients were staring now, sensing drama in the air. A security guard who'd been lounging by the entrance was suddenly at attention, his hand resting on his radio. Another guard materialized from nowhere, positioning himself between Zaire and the exit. Not threatening, exactly, but making it clear that leaving wasn't an option. What the hell had Grandpa gotten her into? The private door opened and a man emerged, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, but his face was tight with an emotion she couldn't identify. "Miss Brooks?" He said her name like a question, though she hadn't given it to anyone. "How do you know my name?" "Please, come with me." It wasn't a request. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "We've been waiting for someone from your family for a very long time." He turned without waiting for an answer, expecting her to follow. The security guards shifted position, not exactly threatening, but making it clear that cooperation was expected. Zaire followed him through the private door, down a hallway lined with oil paintings of stern-faced men. Their eyes seemed to track her movement, judging her thrift store clothes and messy hair, finding her unworthy of whatever legacy she'd stumbled into. "I'm Charles Aldrich," the man said without turning around. "Executive Vice President. My family has managed this bank for 4 generations. Congratulations?" He stopped at an elevator that required a special key to operate. "Your great-great-grandmother was one of our founders. Didn't your family tell you? The elevator doors opened to reveal an interior more luxurious than most hotel rooms. Mahogany panels, crystal fixtures, carpet so thick it swallowed sound. Aldrich gestured for her to enter, then followed, inserting his key and pressing a button marked VB. Tell me what? Zaire asked as they descended. About the Brooks fortune, about why it was sealed, about what your family did to... He caught himself, his professional mask sliding back into place. Well, that's not for me to say. The elevator seemed to drop forever, far deeper than any normal basement. When it finally stopped, they emerged into a corridor that looked like it belonged in a different century. Gas lamps, actual gas lamps, flickered on the walls, casting dancing shadows that made the stone walls seem alive. The air smelled old, like books and metal and secrets that had been buried too long. The Founder's Vault hasn't been opened in 70 years, Aldrich said, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. We'd begun to think no one from your family would ever come back. They reached a massive door, easily 10 feet tall, covered in intricate engravings that told stories in metal. Ships and buildings and faces, a whole history carved in bronze and steel. At its center was a keyhole that perfectly matched the antique key in Zaire's pocket. I'll need to see it, Aldrich said, his voice barely above a whisper. She pulled out the key, and his sharp intake of breath echoed through the corridor. My God, it's real. After all this time, he looked at her with something approaching awe. Do you have any idea what you're holding? A key? The key. The only key. Your great-great-grandmother had it made in Paris by the same locksmith who designed the Vatican's security systems. It can't be duplicated, can't be picked, can't be broken. His hands shook slightly as he gestured to the door. That vault has stood locked for 7 decades because your family... Again, he stopped himself, but this time Zaire caught the fear in his eyes. Because my family what? Perhaps it's better if you see for yourself. He stepped back, giving her space to approach the door. Up close, she could see that the engravings were even more detailed than she'd thought. Faces that looked familiar, though she couldn't place them. Buildings she recognized from downtown. Ships that might have carried cargo she didn't want to think about. She inserted the key. It turned smoothly, like it had been oiled yesterday instead of gathering dust for 70 years. Mechanisms clicked and whirred inside the door, a symphony of precision engineering that spoke of Swiss craftsmanship and unlimited budgets. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the massive door swung open. The room beyond defied belief. It was enormous, the size of a basketball court, with walls that stretched up into shadows. Every surface was lined with paintings in gold frames, documents in glass cases, artifacts that belonged in museums. The air that drifted out smelled of old money and older secrets. This is impossible, she whispered. This is yours, Aldrich corrected, his voice heavy with implications she didn't understand. Or it should have been. Why does the bank care so much about her presence? Word count, 1,187. Hashtag Chapter 5, Internal Collapse and Silent Decision. Target, 800 to 1,000 words. Zaire stood at the threshold of the vault, paralyzed by the magnitude of what lay before her. The wealth was staggering. Paintings she recognized from art history textbooks, documents that looked like they belonged in the National Archives, artifacts that museums would kill for. But it was the silence that unnerved her most. The complete, absolute silence of secrets finally exposed to light. Her mind raced with questions that had no good answers. If this belonged to her family, why had she grown up in a cramped apartment? Why had her mother worked double shifts just to pay for groceries? Why had Grandpa spent his final years in a house that was falling apart around him? I don't understand, she said, her voice barely audible in the vast space. Aldrich remained in the doorway, as if crossing the threshold would somehow contaminate him. Your great-great-grandmother was complicated, brilliant but complicated. She made enemies of very powerful people. What kind of enemies? The kind that don't forget. The kind that pass grudges down through generations like family heirlooms. He checked his watch, a gesture that felt like a countdown. You should know that opening this vault has triggered certain protocols. People have been notified. People who have been waiting 70 years for this moment. Fear crawled up Zaire's spine like ice water. What people? The other founding families. The ones who sealed this vault in the first place. Aldrich's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They'll be here soon. You need to decide what you're going to do. Do about what? About whether you're going to claim your inheritance, or walk away and pretend this never happened. The choice hung in the air between them, heavy with consequences she couldn't begin to calculate. Walk away, and she'd spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been. Stay, and she'd be declaring war on people who had the power to destroy her. What would you do? She asked. Aldrich's laugh was bitter. I'd run, as fast and as far as I could. But then again, I'm not a Brooks. Your family never was very good at running. He left her alone with that observation, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until they faded to nothing. Zaire stood in the doorway, 1 foot in her old life, 1 foot in whatever came next. She thought about her grandfather's final words. The truth isn't always in what people say, it's in what they're afraid to say. Everyone was afraid of this vault, afraid of what it contained, afraid of what it represented. That fear had to mean something. She thought about her mother's reaction at the funeral. The way she'd insisted the house had to be sold immediately. Had she known about this? Had she been trying to protect Zaire from it? Or protect herself? She thought about Kieran's sudden interest in her grandfather's belongings, the way he'd pushed to help with the estate. How long had he known? How long had he been lying? The questions multiplied like cancer cells, each one spawning 3 more. But underneath all the confusion and fear, one truth remained constant. Her grandfather had trusted her with this secret. He'd waited until his deathbed to give her the key, which meant he'd believed she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. Her phone buzzed. A text from Kieran. Where are you? I'm worried. She stared at the message, remembering all the times he'd appeared just when she was vulnerable, just when she needed someone to lean on. Had any of it been real? Or had she been a mark from the very beginning? Another text. Your mom called me. She's worried too. We both think you should come stay with me for a while. Her mother had called him? The same mother who'd barely spoken to her in years, who'd slapped her at Grandpa's funeral, who'd been so eager to sell the house. Now she was worried. Zaire deleted both messages without responding. She pulled out the key, studying its intricate engravings in the light from the vault. Whatever story it told, whatever secrets it unlocked, they were hers now. Her inheritance, her responsibility, her choice. The sound of the elevator echoing down the corridor made her decision for her. They were coming, whoever they were. The people who'd sealed this vault, who'd stolen her family's fortune, who'd spent 70 years making sure no Brooks ever got close to reclaiming what was theirs. Zaire stepped into the vault and pulled the massive door closed behind her. The lock engaged with a sound like finality, sealing her in with her family's secrets. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in an eerie blue glow. She was committed now for better, or worse. She moved deeper into the vault, past paintings worth millions, past documents that could rewrite history books. At the center of it all, on a pedestal like an altar, sat a leather-bound book thicker than a dictionary. She opened it to the first page and saw her great-great-grandmother's handwriting. For my descendants, when the time comes to reclaim what was stolen. Outside, she could hear voices in the corridor. Angry voices. Powerful voices. Voices that belonged to people who weren't used to being denied. But inside the vault, surrounded by her family's legacy, Zaire felt something she'd never experienced before, the intoxicating rush of real power. What will she find in the vault? To my descendant who finally opens this vault, you have a choice. Take the money and run, or use the evidence to destroy them. Choose carefully. They killed me for what I knew, and they will kill you too if you threaten their empire. But know this. Our family's blood runs in the veins of their children. Marcus Thorne's grandson carries Brooks' DNA, whether he knows it or not. Use that knowledge wisely. The vault door shuddered. Metal screamed against metal as whatever they were using to force entry gained purchase. Zaire stuffed the loose page into her pocket and grabbed the most damning documents from the cases. The birth certificate, the murder contracts, the financial records that proved the founding families had built their empires on blood money. A new sound echoed through the vault. Voices, closer now, arguing in hushed tones. Should have destroyed this place decades ago. Can't just disappear, there are protocols. Brooks' girl doesn't know what she's dealing with. Zaire moved to the back of the vault, where she'd noticed another door, smaller and partially hidden behind a display case. It was unlocked, opening onto a narrow staircase that led up into darkness. An escape route. Eliza had thought of everything. But as she climbed the stairs, her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood freeze. I know where you are. We need to talk. Kieran. How could he possibly know where she was? Unless... Another text. My real name is Kieran Thorne. I think we're cousins. Thorne. Marcus Thorne's descendant. The grandson Eliza had written about. Zaire's legs gave out, and she sat hard on the stone steps. Everything made sense now. The way Kieran had appeared in her life just when she was vulnerable. The way he'd steered conversations away from family history. The way he'd been so interested in her grandfather's belongings. He'd been watching her, waiting for this moment, waiting for her to lead him to the vault. But, if Eliza was right, if Marcus Thorne was their shared ancestor, then Kieran was family. Twisted, complicated family, but family nonetheless. Her phone rang. Kieran's name on the screen. Don't hang up, he said before she could speak. I know how this looks, but I can't explain. You're a thorn. I'm a lot of things. But right now, I'm the only person who can get you out of that bank alive. Why should I trust you? Because I've been protecting you for 3 years. Because I could have taken that key from you a dozen times and didn't. Because despite everything my family taught me, I fell in love with you. The vault door finally gave way with a sound like thunder. Shouts echoed up from below, angry voices, urgent commands, the sound of people who weren't used to being denied access to anything. They're in the vault, Zaire whispered. I know. There's an exit at the top of those stairs. It comes out in the alley behind the bank. I'm waiting for you. How do you know about the stairs? Because my family built this place. Because we'd been planning for this day since 1954. Because we knew eventually a Brooks would come back for what was stolen. Zaire climbed faster, her heart pounding in rhythm with her footsteps. What do you want from me? I want to help you destroy them. All of them. My family included. Why? Because I've seen what they're capable of. Because I know what they did to your great-great-grandmother. Because I'm tired of being part of a legacy built on murder and lies. She reached the top of the stairs, where a heavy door stood slightly ajar. Through the crack, she could see daylight. Real daylight, not the artificial glow of the vault's emergency lighting. Kieran? I'm here. If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trap, then you'll destroy me along with the rest of them. You have the evidence now. You have the power. Zaire pushed open the door and stepped into the alley. Kieran stood 20 feet away, leaning against a black sedan. He looked different somehow, older, more serious, like he'd finally stopped pretending to be someone else. Show me your hands, she said. He raised them, palms out. No weapons, no tricks, just a man who looked as tired as she felt. The birth certificate, she said. You knew about it. I suspected. My grandfather used to talk about a woman named Eliza, about a mistake he'd made in his youth. I didn't put it together until I met you, until I saw your grandmother's picture in your grandfather's house. So we're what, cousins? Something like that. The family tree gets complicated when it's built on secrets and lies. Behind them, the door burst open. Security guards poured into the alley, followed by men in expensive suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a boardroom and into a war zone. There! One of them shouted. The Brooks girl! Kieran was already moving, pulling open the car door. Get in. Now. Zaire hesitated for a split second, weighing her options. Trust the man who'd been lying to her for 3 years, or face whatever the founding families had planned for her. The choice was made for her when one of the suited men pulled out a gun. She dove into the car as Kieran gunned the engine. They roared out of the alley, leaving behind shouts and threats, and the sound of her old life crumbling to pieces. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can figure out how to use what you found. And then? Kieran's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we burn it all down. Why did her family lose everything? Who took it from them? The safe house was a penthouse apartment overlooking the city, all glass and steel and the kind of minimalist luxury that screamed money. Kieran moved through it like he owned it, which he probably did, checking windows and activating security systems with practiced efficiency. Drink? He asked, heading to a bar that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. Answers, Zaire said, still clutching the documents she'd stolen from the vault. Starting with how long you've known who I was. Kieran poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, drank half of it in one swallow. Since the day we met. The coffee shop wasn't an accident. I'd been watching you for weeks, waiting for the right moment to make contact. On whose orders? My mother's. Cordelia Ashford Thorne, CEO of First National and current head of the Founding Families Council. He finished the whiskey, poured another. She knew your grandfather was dying. Knew he'd eventually pass the key to someone. She wanted me close to you when that happened. So you could steal it. So I could control the situation. Make sure you never got close enough to the truth to be dangerous. He turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his mask was completely gone. But somewhere along the way, I stopped following orders. When? The night you told me about your grandmother's locket. The way your face lit up when you talked about her, even though you barely remembered her. I realized you weren't just a target anymore. You were... He struggled for the words. You were the first real thing in my life. Zaire wanted to believe him, but trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Your mother, she's the one who confronted me in the vault? Cordelia doesn't confront. She eliminates... Kieran's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face going pale. She's calling an emergency council meeting. All the founding families. They're going to vote on how to handle you. Handle me how? Permanently. The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Zaire sank onto the leather couch, the weight of her situation finally hitting her. She wasn't just fighting for money or justice anymore. She was fighting for her life. There's something else, Kieran said, his voice carefully controlled. About your mother. What about her? She didn't just sign away your inheritance. She's been working for my family for 30 years, feeding them information about your grandfather, about you, about anything that might threaten their interests. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. That's impossible. The $100,000 wasn't a one-time payment. It was the first installment. She's been on their payroll ever since, making sure your family never got close to the truth. Zaire's phone rang. Her mother's name on the screen. Don't answer it, Kieran warned. But Zaire was already swiping to accept. Mom? Zaire, thank God. Where are you? I've been worried sick. Have you? Of course I have. Listen, I know you're upset about your grandfather, but you need to come home. There are people looking for you. Dangerous people. People you work for? Silence. Long enough to confirm everything Kieran had said. I don't know what you think you know, her mother said finally. But you're in over your head. Come home. Let me help you. Help me like you helped Grandpa, like you've been helping me my whole life. You don't understand. I was protecting you. Everything I did was to keep you safe. Safe from what? From my own inheritance? From the truth about our family? From them. Her mother's voice cracked. From the kind of people who kill children to protect their secrets. Do you think I wanted to betray my own father? Do you think I enjoyed watching him die knowing I could have helped him? Then why? Because they have your father. The words hit like ice water. My father's dead. Your father is alive and locked in a psychiatric facility that my employers control. He's been there for 30 years, and he'll stay there as long as I do what they tell me to do. Zaire's world tilted. Everything she'd believed about her life, about her family, about herself, all of it built on lies. Where is he? Somewhere you'll never find him. Somewhere they'll make sure he disappears forever if you don't stop this crusade. Her mother's voice was pleading now, desperate. Please, baby, just walk away. Take whatever money they offer you and disappear. Start over somewhere they can't reach you. And let them win? Let them keep what they stole? Let them keep their secrets so you can keep your life. The line went dead. Zaire stared at the phone, her hands shaking. She's not lying, Kieran said quietly. About your father. I've seen the files. Theron Brooks committed in 1994 for acute paranoid delusions. Except his delusions were all true. You knew? I suspected. My family has a long history of using psychiatric facilities to silence inconvenient people. He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to destroy them. All of them. Even if it means your father dies? Even if it means I die? Kieran turned back to her, something like admiration in his eyes. Then you really are Eliza Brooks' descendant. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're about to declare war on the most powerful families in the city. It means they'll use every weapon they have against you. Money, influence, blackmail, murder. It means the people you love will become targets. Then I'll make sure they can't hurt anyone else. How? Zaire pulled out her phone, scrolled to the photos she'd taken in the vault. By giving this to every news outlet in the country. By making sure the whole world knows what the founding families really are. They'll claim the documents are forgeries. They'll destroy your credibility before you can say a word. Then I'll find another way. There is another way, Kieran said slowly. But you're not going to like it. Tell me, marry me. For real this time. Join the families officially. Then use your position to destroy them from the inside. That's insane. It's the only way to get close enough to hurt them. They'll never see it coming from family. You're asking me to marry into the people who killed my great-great-grandmother. I'm asking you to be smart about your revenge. Eliza tried to fight them head on and lost. Your grandfather spent 70 years planning and got nowhere. Maybe it's time to try a different approach. Zaire looked at the documents spread across the coffee table. Proof of crimes that went back generations. Evidence that could topple empires if used correctly. But Kieran was right. The founding families had survived this long by being smarter, more ruthless, more willing to do whatever it took to protect their interests. Maybe it was time to beat them at their own game. If I say yes, she said, if I agree to this insane plan, what guarantee do I have that you won't betray me? None, Kieran said. Just like I have no guarantee that you won't destroy me along with the rest of them. Then we're both taking a leap of faith. The question is, are you willing to jump? What will Zaire do with this power? I went to your mother first, showed her everything I'd found. She begged me not to go to the authorities, said it was too dangerous. But I was convinced I could protect us both. His hands shook as he spoke. The next day I woke up in a hospital. They said I'd had a psychotic break, that I'd been found wandering the streets talking about conspiracies. Your mother was there, crying, telling the doctors about my delusions. She betrayed you. She saved my life. And yours? Theron's voice was firm despite the pain in his eyes. They would have killed me if she hadn't agreed to their terms. Instead, they made me disappear. Officially, I suffered a complete mental breakdown. Unofficially, I became their insurance policy against your mother ever stepping out of line. Zaire felt sick. So she's been their prisoner too, for 30 years. Watching me rot in here, knowing that any attempt to help me would result in my death. Knowing that raising you meant lying to you every single day. He reached for her hand, his fingers cold and trembling. Don't hate her for the choices she made. Hate the people who forced her to make them. I found the vault, Zaire said quietly. I have the evidence Eliza Brooks collected. I can prove what they did. Theron's face went white. You opened the vault? Dear God, what have you done? What I had to do. What Grandpa wanted me to do. Your grandfather was a bitter old man who let revenge consume his life. He never cared about the cost, never thought about who else would get hurt. Theron gripped her hand tighter. They'll kill you for what you know. They'll kill your mother. They'll kill me. Is your need for justice worth 3 lives? Is their need for power worth all the lives they've already taken? That's not the same thing, isn't it? Zaire pulled her hand free, pacing to the window. How many people have they destroyed? How many families have they torn apart? How many more will suffer if someone doesn't stop them? And you think you're the one to do it? A 25-year-old girl with no money, no connections, no power? I think I'm the only one left who can... Theron was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. You really are my daughter. Same stubborn streak that got me locked up in here. Dad? No, listen to me. If you're determined to do this, if you're going to war with the founding families, then you need to be smart about it. Smarter than I was. Smarter than your great-great-grandmother. How? Don't fight them head on. They're too powerful, too entrenched. You need to make them fight each other. What do you mean? The founding families aren't a monolith. They're a collection of egos and competing interests held together by mutual benefit. Find the cracks. Exploit them. Make them turn on each other. Zaire thought about Kieran's offer, about marrying into the enemy to destroy them from within. Someone already suggested something like that. Who? Kieran Thorne. Marcus Thorne's grandson. Theron's face went hard. You're involved with a Thorne? It's complicated. It's dangerous. The Thornes are the worst of them. They're the ones who specialize in making people disappear. He says he wants to help me destroy his own family. And you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. Theron stood, moving to the window beside her. Outside, the city sprawled in all directions, millions of people living their lives unaware of the corruption that shaped their world. Your mother called me yesterday. he said quietly. First time in 5 years they've let her through. She was crying, begging me to talk you out of whatever you're planning. What did you tell her? That I was proud of you. That maybe it was time someone in our family stopped running and started fighting. He turned to face her. But I also told her that if you get yourself killed, I'll never forgive her for keeping you from me all these years. I'm not going to get killed. Famous last words. He smiled sadly. But if you're determined to do this, then do it right. Don't trust anyone completely, not even the Thorn Boy. Keep your evidence hidden. Have backup plans for your backup plans. And remember, the moment you think you've won, that's when they'll strike hardest. A knock on the door interrupted them. The orderly peered through the window, tapping his watch. Time's up, Theron said. But before you go, there's something else you need to know. About why they really killed Eliza Brooks. I thought it was because she threatened to expose their crimes. That was part of it. But the real reason was simpler. She was pregnant again. Zaire's blood turned to ice. Again? Marcus Thorne's second child. A son. Born in 1955, 3 months after Eliza's death. Officially, the child died in infancy. Unofficially. He shrugged. The Thorne family suddenly had a new heir with no questions asked about his parentage. You're saying Kieran has a brother? I'm saying Kieran might not be who he thinks he is. And if he's not, then everything he's told you about his family, about his motivations, about his feelings for you, all of it could be a lie. The door opened, and the orderly stepped in. Time to go, folks. Zaire hugged her father, breathing in the antiseptic smell of his clothes, memorizing the feel of his arms around her. I'll get you out of here. Just stay alive, he whispered. That's all I want. Just stay alive. Will she expose the truth or protect her family's secrets? The confrontation with her mother happened in the same kitchen where Zaire had eaten countless bowls of cereal, done homework, and pretended her family was normal. Now the familiar space felt like a stage set for a play she'd never auditioned for. Her mother sat at the table, a glass of wine untouched in front of her, looking older than Zaire had ever seen her. The perfect makeup was gone, revealing lines of stress and guilt that had been hidden for years. You saw him, her mother said without looking up. It wasn't a question. You lied to me about everything. Zaire remained standing, needing the height advantage, needing to feel like she had some control in this conversation. My whole life has been a lie. Your whole life has been me trying to keep you safe. Safe? You sold my inheritance. You betrayed your own father. You let my dad rot in a psychiatric prison for 30 years. How is any of that keeping me safe? Her mother finally looked up, and Zaire saw tears she'd never seen before. Because the alternative was watching you die. Do you think I wanted to sign those papers? Do you think I enjoyed taking their money, knowing what it cost? Then why did you? Because I was 22 years old, pregnant, and the man I loved was locked away for knowing too much. Because they showed me pictures of what happened to other people who'd crossed them. Because they made it very clear that cooperation was the only way any of us would survive. Her mother stood, moving to the window that looked out on the small backyard where Zaire had played as a child. You want to know the truth? The whole truth? I was in love with your father, but I was also terrified of him. He was brilliant, passionate, completely convinced he could change the world. And that conviction was going to get us all killed. So you chose to betray him instead. I chose to save him. And you, and myself. She turned back to Zaire, her face hard with decades of suppressed pain. Do you know what it's like to visit the man you love in a psychiatric facility, knowing you're the reason he's there? Do you know what it's like to raise his child while lying about why he can't be part of her life? You could have told me the truth. When? When you were 5 and asking why you didn't have a daddy. When you were 10 and wondering why we never had any money. When you were 15 and already showing signs of the same stubborn idealism that destroyed your father. I had a right to know. You had a right to live. Her mother's voice cracked. And that's what I gave you. A normal childhood. A chance to grow up without the weight of our family's curse. What curse? The Brooks curse. The need to fight battles we can't win. The compulsion to seek justice even when it destroys everything we love. She gestured to the photos on the refrigerator. Zaire's graduation, family holidays, moments of happiness built on lies. Your great-great-grandmother died for her principles. Your grandfather spent 70 years consumed by bitterness. Your father lost his mind pursuing the truth. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. But it did happen to me. Because you didn't trust me enough to make my own choices. Because I loved you too much to watch you make the same mistakes. They stood in silence, the weight of 30 years of deception hanging between them like a wall. Zaire thought about her father's words, about not hating her mother for the choices she'd been forced to make. But understanding and forgiveness were different things. They're going to kill me, Zaire said finally. For what I know, for what I found in the vault. They're going to kill me, and it's going to be your fault. No. Her mother's voice was steel. It's going to be your choice, just like it was mine, just like it was your father's. We all had chances to walk away, to choose safety over justice. You still have that chance. And if I don't take it, then I'll help you fight them. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Zaire stared at her mother, searching for deception, for another layer of lies. But all she saw was a woman who'd spent 30 years carrying the weight of impossible choices. Why now? Why would you help me now? Because I'm tired of being afraid. Because I'm tired of watching your father waste away in that place. Because maybe it's time our family stopped running and started fighting back. Her mother moved to a cabinet, pulled out a manila envelope that had been hidden behind the dishes. And because I kept copies of what? Everything. Every document I signed, every payment I received, every instruction they gave me. 30 years of evidence that I was working for them. She handed the envelope to Zaire. Insurance, in case they ever decided I was more liability than asset. Zaire opened the envelope, finding bank records, signed agreements, even photographs of her mother meeting with various members of the founding families. This could destroy you. I'm already destroyed, have been for 30 years, but maybe it can save you. How? By proving that everything I did was under duress, by showing that they've been manipulating our family for decades, by giving you leverage. Zaire studied her mother's face, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. Not the cold, distant woman who'd raised her, but a scared girl who'd been forced to make impossible choices and had been living with the consequences ever since. There's something else, her mother said. About Kieran Thorne. What about him? He's not who he thinks he is. The birth records were falsified. He's not Marcus Thorne's grandson. He's Eliza Brooks's son, your great-uncle, the child she was carrying when they killed her. The revelation hit like a physical blow. That's impossible. They stole him, raised him as their own, made him into the perfect weapon against our family. Someone who could get close to you, gain your trust, manipulate you into doing exactly what they wanted. Does he know? I don't think so. But his mother does. Cordelia Ashford Thorne has been planning this for 70 years. Every move, every relationship, every choice you've made. She's been orchestrating all of it. Zaire sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the deception. So when I fell in love with him, you fell in love with your own family, which makes his betrayal even more twisted. He says he wants to help me destroy them, and maybe he does. But can you trust the motivations of someone who doesn't even know who he really is? The meeting was set for midnight at the old pier, the same place where Eliza Brooks had been found dead 70 years ago. Kieran had chosen the location, claiming it was symbolic, a chance to end where it all began. But as Zaire walked through the fog-shrouded darkness, she wondered if she was walking into her own execution. The pier stretched out into the black water like a finger pointing toward oblivion. Fog rolled in from the harbor, thick enough to muffle sound and hide secrets. Zaire could hear the water lapping against the pilings below, a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Kieran was waiting at the end of the pier, silhouetted against the city lights across the water. He looked different in the darkness, older, more dangerous, like the mask he'd worn for 3 years had finally been discarded completely. You came, he said without turning around. Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. That's what I've learned from all this. He turned to face her, and in the dim light, she could see something that might have been regret in his eyes. The question is whether we're brave enough to make the right one. And what's the right choice, Kieran? Or should I call you by your real name? His face went still. What are you talking about? I know who you really are. Not just Marcus Thorne's great-grandson, but something more complicated than that. Zaire stepped closer, watching his reaction. My mother kept records, DNA tests, birth certificates. We're related, Kieran. Distant cousins through blood that was spilled 70 years ago. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it. The way you've always felt different from the rest of your family. The way you've never quite fit into their world. The way you were drawn to me from the moment we met. She pulled out her phone, showed him a photograph her mother had given her, a family tree that connected the Brooks and Thorne bloodlines through Marcus Thorne's illegitimate children. Your great-grandfather had more than one affair, more than one secret child. We share the same corrupted legacy. He stared at the document, his hands shaking. No. My family told me. Your family lied, just like mine did. Just like everyone in this city has been lying for 70 years. Zaire put the phone away, her heart breaking for him despite everything. But it explains everything, doesn't it? Why you could never quite bring yourself to betray me completely. Why you fell in love with me despite your orders. Why you're here now, ready to destroy the only family you've ever known. Kieran sank onto a bench, his head in his hands. If this is true, if we're really, then everything I am, everything I've believed about myself, is built on the same lies that shaped my life. Zaire sat beside him, close enough to touch but not quite daring to. The question is, what do we do now? I don't know. His voice was barely audible over the sound of the water. I came here tonight to tell you something, about my family's plans, about what they're going to do to stop you. But if what you're saying is true, tell me anyway. They're going to frame you for terrorism, plant evidence that you're planning to bomb the bank, to kill innocent people. They've already started spreading the story, unstable young woman, radicalized by family conspiracy theories, dangerous and unpredictable. And you were supposed to help them do it. I was supposed to be the grieving boyfriend who tried to stop you. The tragic figure who lost the woman he loved to extremism. He looked up at her, his eyes hollow. They have everything planned. The evidence, the witnesses, the narrative. By tomorrow morning, you'll be public enemy number one. Unless you disappear. Tonight. Forever. They'll let you live if you vanish completely. Never to be seen or heard from again. And my father? My mother? Your father stays in the facility. Your mother continues her work for them. Everyone lives, but nothing changes. Zaire stood, pacing to the edge of the pier. The water below was black as oil, reflecting the city lights like fallen stars. There's another option, which is... we give them what they want. We give them a terrorist. Kieran's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Think about it. They're planning to frame me anyway. They've already created the narrative, planted the evidence. But what if we turn it around? What if we use their own plan against them? You're talking about actually bombing the bank? I'm talking about exposing them in a way they can't cover up, can't spin, can't make disappear. Zaire turned back to him, her mind racing with possibilities. What if we stage the bombing? Make it look real but target their secrets instead of people. Blow open the vault, scatter the evidence to the wind, make sure every news outlet in the country gets copies of everything? That's insane. Is it more insane than letting them win, than letting them continue to destroy families for another 70 years? Kieran was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. Even if we could pull it off, even if we could expose them without killing anyone, they'd still destroy us. We'd be fugitives for the rest of our lives. Maybe. Or maybe we'd be heroes. Maybe the truth would finally set everyone free. And maybe we'd just be dead. Then we'd be dead for something that mattered. The fog was getting thicker, wrapping around them like a shroud. In the distance, Zaire could hear the sound of cars, of the city going about its business, unaware that the fate of its most powerful families was being decided on a rotting pier in the middle of the night. There's something else, Kieran said finally. Something I haven't told you. What? I'm not the only one they sent to watch you. There's someone else. Someone who's been in your life even longer than I have. Who? I don't know. They call them the insurance policy. Someone so close to you that you'd never suspect them. Someone who's been reporting on your every move since you were a child. Zaire's blood turned to ice. Since I was a child? They've been planning this for decades. Every relationship you've had, every choice you've made, they've been guiding it all, making sure you'd end up exactly where you are right now. But who could? She stopped, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Oh God. What? My best friend, Sarah. She's been in my life since elementary school. Always there when I needed her, always asking the right questions, always steering conversations away from family history. Zaire pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts. She's the one who introduced me to you. She's the one who suggested that coffee shop. Are you sure? She's a journalist, freelance, always working on investigative pieces that never seem to get published, always asking about my grandfather, about family, stories about... Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Hey girl, haven't heard from you since the funeral. Everything okay? Want to grab coffee tomorrow? She knows, Zaire whispered. She knows I found the vault. She's probably been watching me all day. Then we're out of time. No. Zaire's voice was steel. We're exactly where we need to be. She started typing a response to Sarah. Coffee sounds perfect. Meet me at the bank tomorrow at noon. I have something amazing to show you. What are you doing? I'm giving them their terrorist attack. But not the way they planned it. She finished the text. Hit send. Sarah will report back to them. They'll think I'm planning to hit the bank during business hours when it's full of innocent people. They'll mobilize everything, police, FBI, media. The whole world will be watching. And then we give them a show they'll never forget. We expose everything, live on television, with the whole world as our witness. Kieran stared at her, something like admiration in his eyes. You really are willing to risk everything. I'm willing to risk everything to end this. The question is, are you... He was quiet for a long moment, weighing the choice between the family that had raised him and the woman who'd shown him what love could be, between the safety of lies and the danger of truth. If we do this, he said finally, there's no going back. We'll be enemies of the state, fugitives. We'll never have a normal life. We never had a normal life. We just thought we did. And if we fail? Then we fail fighting for something that matters. That's more than most people can say. Kieran stood, moving to stand beside her at the edge of the pier. You know this is probably suicide. Probably. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with dying for the truth. I'm not okay with living with lies. He took her hand, their fingers intertwining like they had 1,000 times before. But this time felt different. Final. Then let's burn it all down, he said. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like stars, beautiful and oblivious. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would finally have its day. But tonight, two people who'd been shaped by lies stood together in the darkness, choosing love over safety, truth over survival, justice over peace. What would you do if the truth could destroy everything you love?